Let's be honest, there's no guidebook when it comes to relationships. So we end up having to stumble through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. What if there was a podcast that found the answers for you, that provided insight to build a successful relationship and ultimately find the companionship you've always hoped for? Welcome to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we answer the questions most people are afraid to ask when it comes to lessons in life and love. It's time to master this thing called life together with your hosts, John and Ashley.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Girls Ask Guys show.
Hi.
Today we have a guest with us. His name is Taylor, and we're going to be discussing the ambiguity of dating and what it looked like back then and really what is happening today with the traditional models and what everybody is being taught.
Right.
So we want to welcome Taylor to the show.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. So we were talking a little before the show, and I've done a little bit of research into ambiguity, what it looks like, and what has happened. And what I found was that this is actually a very heavily researched topic as far as social psychology goes. And I think one of the biggest studies is done by Professor Scott Taylor out of the University of Denver. He's been studying commitment, cohabitating, or what he calls cohabitating in marriage since really the early 80s.
Wow, what a crazy thing. Like, can you imagine studying dating habits over the last 30 years? I can only imagine the amount of societal changes, social changes, and everything that's been made. So to study that, you can't even quantify. Like, you can't even begin to quantify or even really think about what dating is versus what dating can be. And I think that's where the ambiguity really comes in is, what the hell is dating? You know what I mean? Taylor, you want to weigh in?
Sure, absolutely. If we're talking about past versus present, when you look at the courtship model of, let's say, the 50s, 60s,
right.
You know, the idealized white picket fence time of America, whatever it may be, as far as like family life, courtship looks a lot different than it does today. There's no social media. There's no online dating. You've got to be at home to answer the phone. So it's a much more formalized process. You know, guy meets girl, guy and girl go to get ice cream, guy and girl go to a movie, guy and girl go to point, driving around in the car like you'd see in a lot of these classic movies. But ultimately, there's a much longer courtship period before you would have any type of like sexual intimacy. Not like 100% of the time, but as far as like a relationship to develop and so on and so forth. And what you start to see is that there's been a shift in one key thing that I've identified, and that's who is pressing who for exclusivity. So if you look at the more traditional courtship, right, generally it's going to be the woman pressing the man for exclusivity, monogamy, the relationship, and, you know, making him wait and those kinds of things. But what's interesting is that when you look at now with social media and online dating, a lot of times it's actually guys who are pressing girls for exclusivity and monogamy. I think that's a drastic paradigm switch, and it actually can inform you a lot about kind of the nature of relationships now and some of the problems that we have and the things that are much different.
Yeah. No, that's very relevant, very true. I think the shift comes in where we look at these relationships from the 50s, by the way, my favorite time of courtship, because like you guys know me, I love courtship, I love dating.
Mm-hmm.
I think the drastic change comes into where women started speaking out about, yes, he asked me to wear his pin, he did all these things for me. But in the background, he's a drunk, he's doing this, he's doing that. So I think the reason that it shifted was because what looked like gold on paper, really, when you get into the subtext, was fucking tungsten, which I do think is better than gold.
Oh, absolutely. You're so right. And the thing is, too, is we look at coming into the modern era, you know, we live in an era of female empowerment, you know, with the rise of female agency and gender equality. Not to say everything's perfect, but the woman of today has a lot more agency, a lot more power. And social media grants a lot of that social status, you know, in the sense of, you know, there's a platform where women are idolized and they have a place where they feel they can be important.
Right.
In like just a normal social setting, whereas in like the 50s, 60s, whatever it is, there's a lot less of that agency that's present in just like the common setting. Right?
Women don't need men anymore. And I mean, it sounds very terrible to say it that way, and men don't feel devalued. What I mean is, back in the day, you needed to get married, you needed to have children to feel any value. But now you can be a woman who goes to law school and be someone. So the reason that men are now craving that is because women don't need them anymore. And
Oh,
it used to
absolutely.
be, I knew, every man could guarantee that he would find a woman. It didn't matter how homely she was, how pretty she was. Every
Mhm.
man knew for a fact they were getting married because they knew that if a woman wanted to feel value in society, she got married. Now it's like, well, they don't need us anymore. What, can you please be my wife? It's very much that.
That's so right. Well, and again, you talk about how, the woman doesn't need a man anymore. And it goes kind of beyond that in the sense of now women are, have this power of the social media. And if we're being perfectly honest, social media is an arena that women have mastered and men very simply have not.
That's why they pay me the medium bucks. I've mastered it.
Yeah.
So the other thing we look at is with the rise of kind of this gender equality, if we're talking about this transition from less female agency to more female agency, is that men have not necessarily figured out how to act, how to be present in this media age. And
men aren't mental creatures. Men aren't mental creatures. Social media is a total mental game, and men are not mental creatures. Social media is literally, it is the most well thought out, and honestly the biggest mistake we've ever made in our lives as human beings. But it is the most well thought out. You have to have a literal plan going into it. You have to think, and you have to forethink and think from the past. And this isn't to say
we're not social creatures.
Right. Like men are just like, ugh, me strong. Women are like, first of all, I'm strong. I'm I'm independent. I can predict what you're going to say, predict how you react, and realize what the outcome of that is going to be. And women think that way. Women are strategic. Men are more
tactical.
That's the word. That's a polite word for what I was going to say. Very polite.
Well, so going back to models, right? So 1950s, 60s, idealized courtship is dead in the modern era because we have these things called social media and online dating. And so lacking that kind of more traditional style of courtship, that model of what makes a relationship work, we're kind of left with today, which is online speed dating and kind of value trade-offs through, online dating. And nobody's really sure, am I supposed to be going out during the day and trying to meet girls at the mall? Am I supposed to just meet people through my social circle? Should I be doing online dating? And you're not really sure what it looks like when you're trying to be successful, when it feels good, when it feels natural, because none of this is what we were designed as cave people to do, right?
Right. With the online, the thing that you're missing is the human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with a device that's really two-dimensional, and you've got a photo that may or may not be Photoshopped and a small description, which may or may not be true. So unless you actually meet the person in real life, you're still up in the air. You don't know.
Well, and that seems to be the big struggle for a lot of people, is getting off of the online dating and getting to real life. But you're exactly right, John, where the human element is missing. So, these interactions you see people have are just kind of bland and unassuming and not really going anywhere. And everybody feels like, oh, this is kind of a waste of time. So you have to take your approach to online dating. Like Ashley said, you have to be strategic. You have to think ahead. You have to figure it out, how you want to be perceived, how you want your pictures to be seen. You need to have good pictures. You need to have that all figured out ahead of time. And men are just not good at doing that.
No, men are like, this is what I think.
We're not raised that way. Women in general, as little girls playing on the playground, they are taught through our families. So it's handed down from one generation to the next. This is what you do. And they are very socially adept. They learn how to talk and communicate a lot faster.
From the beginning. Yeah.
From the beginning. For guys, we are primarily independent, and you give us two little action figures and we can play for hours clashing those things together. And then we only have one or two other people that we kind of interact with, and those are our close friends. We don't have a wide circle of people that we interact with on a regular basis. Women really do. They have more people that they interact with.
We're social creatures. Women are way more social, like you said. The guys are very more tactical. And that's why I think the best thing that came out of the 50s was the concept of, courtship and dating and all. Obviously, it's an old thing where you used to give a guy a pig and you say, I want to marry your daughter, and he would let you marry his daughter. But the 50s really showed us where I can court you, which I think is amazing. I love courting. I think it's one of my favorite parts of anything. I can court you. I can show you that you're valuable. You can show me that I'm valuable. And the problem is what happens is when people get married, that shit flips to where it's no longer, I'm going to show you you're valuable. You need to love me for whoever I am. And that's where I think things get really ambiguous, is the transition from courting to dating to marrying. In between those, shit gets rough and confusing and very uncomfortable because people lie. Quite frankly, that's all it is nowadays. People fucking lie. Like, you go on social media and you go online and you see someone and they have good pictures. They have the most woke, quote unquote, quotes. They have all these things. And really behind the background, they're just a bum with nothing. You know what I mean? Like,
so I think that value transfer, Ashley, that you highlighted is a really important aspect of today's dating as well. So when we're looking at online dating and we're looking at even just dating in real life with using social media, it's a lot about how valuable can I make myself appear? And like you said, that's not, it's not always the case for how valuable you are versus how valuable you appear. So that disconnect can certainly lead to issues. But also, let me just jump back real quick to like the ideas and models. So we talked about idealized 1950s. We've talked about today as far as like social media goes. But there's another element that I think is really important before we get talking into like relationship stuff, is that for men at least, not only are we in this arena that we are not skilled and capable of, but we also have another problem, and that is it's very unclear in like today's world, what is it to be a man? Who is the man that I am supposed to be? Because in the 70s and 80s, if you take a look back at that time, it's very clear. You've got a mustache, you've got a mullet for some reason, a lot of chest hair, but you're confident. You're the provider, you're masculine. And what we've seen is that traditional model of manliness, which is not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong, has been stripped away and nothing has been put up to fill that void. There are certainly male role models that we have in today's world, but I feel like it's much more ambiguous about who am I actually supposed to be? Because I'm constantly told, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but no one's telling me who I should be. I think that uncertainty for men makes it difficult.
I think the model that has been put in place today is you're supposed to be the action star. You're supposed to be big muscles, go out, blow up cities, and take out a bunch of aliens. That's what being a man today is. Yeah. And it really comes from your television and movies, because that's pretty much what the biggest influence is today. Because even back in the 50s, the traditional family model, that was Leave It to Beaver. June Cleaver woke up. She had perfect hair, wearing her pearls. Breakfast is on the table. Here comes Ward, and he's in pretty much a suit and tie, and the world is perfect. Yeah. But then you skip forward to today, and the families are totally fucked up and dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. And the guy at night puts on a cape and mask and goes,
That's very funny. I think what happened is really, and we talk about TV and, radio and all those things being a giant influence, women were empowered where men were pigeonholed. So women were shown throughout the years. I mean, we're talking 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We can think of every show we want to, but at the end of the day, men were supposed to be the provider. They were supposed to be, the father. They were supposed to go to work, come home, have dinner on the table. Women, there was a shift where, yes, we had June Cleaver, but then we had Claire Huxtable. You know what I mean? And from Claire Huxtable, it evolved into whoever stars in American Housewife. But basically, women were taught you can be anything. Men were taught you have to be this. And now it's shifting because women have taken that power, and men are still like, well, then where the fuck do I fit in?
Yeah, because our role hasn't really changed. And I think even with dating, and not to take away from the models that you're looking at, but I like what Professor Stanley was talking about. And there's no longer a declaration of anything. Mm-hmm. It's more like we just kind of slide into different aspects. Even for myself, I am somewhat ambiguous in the beginning, and then I become more defined and decisioned.
Slide in the DMs, John. Slide in the relationship, and soon you got 2 kids and a happy life, I guess.
Yeah, but that's only in the beginning for myself. Because I really don't ask somebody out on a date. I'm like, hey, would you mind hanging out and having some coffee later on? And that's kind of that slide. And she could be sitting across the table from me, sipping on her mochaccino or whatever. And she's going through her head. She's like, are we hanging out or is this a date?
First of all, the coffee is always the best first date.
It's one of those that I do repeatedly because it's very low pressure. Yeah, it's very low pressure. It's during the day. Mm-hmm. There's escape routes if either one of us need to get out of there.
Bail.
Yeah, but later on, usually after that first date, I'll have enough information that I'm like, could we actually go on a date Saturday or Friday or whatever? And I come with a plan. Mm-hmm. Instead of just sliding through it, I'm making a declaration.
I think, John, you hit kind of the transition perfectly there, going from old school courtship with all this ambiguity that's going on. People feel very anxious when they find someone they like or they think that they like. They're very anxious to kind of just jump into the deep end and want to have like a relationship from day one. And, you know, you'll meet people that have known each other for 2 weeks and they're like, yeah, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm like,
we're getting married.
Hi,
you don't know anything about each other.
Yeah.
That's fully me. And I think it's more along the lines of, I guess, knowing that you like somebody, because I don't like a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like, I pretty much don't like anyone who isn't serving me to a certain degree.
Sure.
But when I meet someone, a stranger who I like, it's like, you're an interesting person and I want to be with you. And I think that's where, you know, most people make the mistake is they don't realize you don't have to love everyone. You can date people. And that's the mistake I make too commonly. Fortunately for me, it has worked out to the point where I'm in a happy relationship. But a lot of people rush that. And the reason they rush it is because they feel like this is the only part, like there's not 7 billion other people out there.
This is my person. I finally found someone who likes me. This is my person forever, you know?
Yes.
It's too much. Well, and I think a lot of what that stems from is insecurity, is not knowing where your next meal is going to come from in a dating sense. But also, people make these decisions during that like honeymoon period, right? When you first meet someone and you kind of hit it off and you start to bond, there's a period in the beginning where you really have high elevated feelings of emotion. But like John said, you can't just be jumping to make decisions about your relationship in that period, because if you make concrete decisions about your relationship in the first 2 weeks when you're feeling great, and then you lock yourself into a monogamous relationship with someone that you don't really know, then 6 months down the line, you still feel obligated to be in a relationship with someone because of societal pressure, but you're not really happy because you didn't take the time to figure out kind of the framework, the groundwork to make sure that you two were actually compatible. And I think that's where we see a lot of problems in modern dating as well. We just want to have that in a relationship status on Facebook, where we don't really think it all the way through.
Right. And kind of going back just a little bit with the value. A lot of people, they place their value in their job, how much money they have, the types of possessions that they have. The value that they're trying to bring is material and replaceable. And what we try to teach people and what we want to show people is that the value is internal. What do you bring that cannot be replaced? Right. So if you don't know what your own value is, it's very hard to actually find the other person that kind of slides into that value area that you are lacking in.
Compliments you.
Yes. It enhances you. It pushes you to discover more things about yourself.
Right. And value doesn't mean perfect. I mean, bringing value to the table does not, because, you know, and you guys know me, you listen to me every week. You know, I'm an emotional wreck 9 out of 10 times. But does that mean that I'm not valuable? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is I know my weaknesses, I know my strengths, and I provide my strengths while being honest about my weaknesses. And bringing that to the table in the beginning will help you so much more versus you trying to present yourself as a perfect person.
Well, and so this goes back to something that gets thrown around a lot in kind of like the dating world and the coaching world, and it's the concept of abundance versus scarcity. And I've probably heard this 10,000 times.
It's one of the common themes.
The thing is, until you've actually really experienced that in your life, though, it's hard to make it like stick. But the idea is essentially, if you guys are not familiar, is when you don't have your life figured out, when you don't have the emotional security that you need, when you don't have the financial security that you need, you're in a place that's called scarcity, which means that you're kind of be desperate for whatever you're looking to take from people. But when you're in an abundance mentality, when you've got kind of your life more figured out and you're more confident, you're feeling less needy, so to speak, you can give to other people. And I think that's a fundamental paradigm. When you're looking to give and you're looking to take, people notice that about you. And it fundamentally changes your interactions with the people around you. And especially when it comes to the dating world, if you're looking to take from someone, take. I need you to validate me. I need you to make me feel good. Versus if you're looking to give love, give value, give affection, those are going to fundamentally change the foundations of your relationships.
Right.
So true.
Yeah. Coming from that whole pickup artist world and everything, I think I've mentioned it 1 or 2 times on the show about having an abundance mentality. I didn't describe it in that detail. The way that I put it was, if it doesn't work out for me with this person, there's another person around the corner.
Right.
But that's only because I know what I'm bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the person that I'm talking with or the person I'm going out with isn't enhancing my life and they're just doing that constant take, it's not going to work for me. But I meet so many people on a daily basis that I'm not worried about where the next person I want to meet is going to come from.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people do that, though. Like, a lot of people don't meet people on a daily basis. A lot of people go to work, come home. And as you transition into adulthood, that's really what it becomes, is a routine. So that mindset of scarcity versus abundance becomes more prevalent because you're not meeting people a lot. You're not working. A lot of people, like I said, don't meet people. So you're not only wondering, you're afraid. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, if I don't put myself out there as the richest, most emotionally validating person, how am I going to meet anyone?
Well, yeah. And Ashley and John, both of you, your eyes both rolled in the back of your head when I brought out that concept. But I think,
no.
But I think it's important to touch on. But even more important, and John, you actually hit this right on the head, is the concept of outcome independence. Of people misconstrue this as, I don't care what happens. That's not true. You still care about how things turn out. But John, exactly like you said, if this one thing doesn't work out, it's okay. I've got the next. Or I'm moving on to the next project. And actually, like you said, when you are just in the same routine and you're doing the same thing, for this example, if you're just swiping on Tinder every day, you're not changing anything about yourself or your life or the way that you live, then you're much more attached to the individual outcomes than you would be. And that leads you into scarcity, and that leads you into that take mentality.
Right. That's really what I find a lot of when I'm actually going out with a lot of people, because I'm more of the person that an old term, but I play the field. So I go out with multiple people at the same time. Actually, it's a lot. So much. Yeah, actually not so much. But with that, I don't just slide into one, or I don't go from just hanging out and then kind of, I think we're dating. Are we dating? I think so. Okay, I guess we are. I don't do that. And I think a lot of people do that today. They just kind of gradually transition, and before they know it, they've got the job, they got the house, they got the wife, they got the 2.5 kids, they've got the dog.
And they wake up and they're like, why the fuck am I here?
I hate this. Yeah.
It's more like, how did I get here? How did this happen?
It has to be more thought out than just...
Well, there's no declaration.
Yeah. What's crazy is people act like they don't have mouths and they can't speak. And I think that is one of the biggest issues that we have in dating in general, is people are so afraid to speak up to another individual who they think things might be changing, their dynamics might be changing. And so they kind of just go along and go along and go along. Like, here, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you're an adult, you have a mouth, you need to speak to that person. You need to clarify. I am a clarification psychopath. If I don't understand something, I will ask you a million questions until I get it. And that is because I don't leave room for ambiguity.
And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, because you can take that beautiful, unique person that you are and move on to the next person, and hopefully it'll work out a little better. And if it doesn't, then again, it kind of seems like an endless march till the end of time, but you'll get there eventually if you keep on going. But if you stop and you settle, then you're going to find yourself unhappy later on down the road because you weren't true to yourself in the beginning.
And if you are happy, then be happy. Like, don't listen to us and say, well, I need to question everything. If you're happy, be happy. Seriously, because I know someone will listen to us and be like, well, shit, am I happy? You're probably happy, okay? This is for people who are literally confused about what's happening in their dating.
Struggling to make even like the first steps to a relationship.
Do not question your entire relationship because we are talking about this.
Yeah.
Or do, but have a conversation. Don't just go off into the woods and meditate.
I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's that whole slide versus decide is people just kind of slide through it because it's low risk. And I've used this in the past where I'm talking with this, well, Ashley's heard this story 1,000 times already.
I already know the story.
And I'm standing in the grocery store and I ask a question and then I'm talking with this girl throughout the entire store. And at the end, I make my own decision. I want to get to know her. So I'm like, hey, do you mind meeting up later on and having a cup of coffee? Well, it's very low risk. I'm not risking anything. I'm not putting anything out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to ambiguity. But later on, when I'm on the date, we meet for coffee. Then we go out and we walk around a park or walk around the city or something. Then we go and do something fun. And then I actually lay it down. I make a decision. Hey, can we meet for a date? So I'm making a declaration. I'm actually committing to something. And she can either say yes or no. But without that declaration, everybody's kind of confused. They don't know where they are and where the relationship sits.
I fully blame Hollywood for that. Hollywood has made it seem like, and movies and TV, like we said, are one of our biggest influences as humans. They've made it seem like dating is this high pressure situation where like it has to lead to marriage, it has to lead to this. Or they've made it seem like, courting someone or all that stuff is very uncool and very weird. Where, to me, it's like the exact opposite. Courting is awesome, courting is fun, courting is sexy. Dating does not have to lead to marriage, but it would be nice if it did. And you don't have to have some ridiculous rom-com type fantasy. Life can literally just be easy.
Well, that's, I think John hit it right in the head earlier where he said, I used to do first dates as coffee. Because like you said, Ashley, when this situation that you're going in there to defuse the bomb and you're sweating and you don't want him to say the wrong things, it'll detonate the whole situation. Coffee dates are the great first date because you only have to do two things on a first date, in my opinion. You need to show each other that you're not serial killers. And you can hold a normal conversation. You can hang out. And you can be normal. And you can enjoy each other's company. And you need to build some sort of attraction, sexual tension. There needs to be some kind of, for lack of a better word, a spark there that's going to lead to something more intimate. And if those things don't happen or they're not present, I'd rather spend $6 than $100 to find that out.
Exactly.
Yeah, you should never spend $100 on a date until she's marrying you. I'm just saying.
Even that.
But
Thrifty.
Even with that, there's, in order to get that sexual spark, you actually have to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
Guys have been scared to do that ever since the Me Too movement.
Well, rightfully so. I mean, the guys in the Me Too movement were fucking predators.
Well, a lot of that also came from the pickup artist world because that's where they were learning that shit from.
Like, sleep with me and, this is not the Georgia looking for kind of girl. So.
Mm-hmm.
They're scared of actually putting themselves out there because they don't want to be seen as harassing or assuming that that's where she wants to go. Yeah, women on the reverse side of it, they don't want to put themselves out there because they get labeled as being a slut or being a whore, whatever term that is going to be used.
Can we just agree that in 2020, slut shaming is dead? Can we just,
we don't do that. I tell women all the time, make the first move, girl. Like, do it. Yeah. Grab his dick if you need to. Like, make consensually, but make the first move. And you know why? Because the Me Too movement happened. Because men don't understand when is the right time to act. And I think it is the most
somebody's got to move first.
Exactly.
Somebody
and I
has
think
to do it.
A woman moving first is better than a man moving first in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, there's no problem with woman moving first. It still kind of boggles my mind.
Weird, yeah.
Because it doesn't happen that often yet.
Well, I'm still sitting there like, all right, when's the other shoe drop?
Or kiss him, tell him it's okay, and comfort the man in the way where he feels okay and understands that I'm making this move. It is consensual, because for a man to act and just act, if a woman has a negative reaction, it can ruin your entire fucking life, and that sucks. And I know it sucks, and I can't imagine that happening. But if a woman makes the first move, a man's like, sweet.
He's going to go back and brag to his buddies about it.
Absolutely, yeah. She couldn't even keep her fucking hands off me, you know what I mean? Whereas a man, he makes the wrong move, and it literally can ruin his life. So I am a full fan of women making the first move. Obviously, consensually, but I think it's a better and a happier medium than men just acting on their own desires. I really do. I think it makes more sense.
it comes back to, a lot of it comes back to how you convey yourself, having that abundance and outcome independent mentality, and also just the frames that you're taking. I don't know, Don, if that's something that frame is a lot of how you build that initial attraction and sexual interaction.
It is.
Those are all specific conversations for maybe another day, but the end goal being is that you want to date someone and you want to have this relationship. You can still do that. You can still court, like Ashley's saying. You can still do all these things. You just need to come at it at about 50% less speed.
Right. Slow it down.
Yeah, because I think that's another big problem, because when you look at dating in the past, there were very specific certain steps that were taught. And over time, those things actually got torn down. Back in the 1800s, if I wanted to go out with a girl,
she had to kill a pig, bring it to her father.
I actually had to go to the dad and ask permission. And he would say yes or no. It was almost like a unconventional arranged marriage.
It's very much that.
You're not
That's
from our station. We own corporations and businesses, and you're a stable hand? Hell no, she's not marrying you.
Right. Fuck you, farm boy. You can't marry. And that's terrible for women, in the sense where women now, like I said, they have that power to decide who they're going to date. You can't just go to my dad and say, I want to marry your daughter, and he's going to be like, all right, marry her off. Now women are like, maybe I like you, maybe I don't. Let's keep casual. And men are like, but it's supposed to be easier.
Yeah, definitely not better in that sense, but most certainly simpler.
Better for women, I promise you.
Yeah, well, I think everybody nowadays is pretty much allowed to go and date and marry whoever they want. Unless you're from one of those rom-coms and they're like, she works in the mailroom. What are you doing going out with her?
Right. Like, there's the thing is leagues, and leagues don't exist. I don't believe leagues exist. John doesn't either. There's no such thing as out of your league. They are a human being, so they're in your species. They are an adult, so they're in your dating rights. They are not out of your league. They never will be. You need confidence. You don't need to be told. If someone's telling you they're out of your league, then that's not a friend. That's an enemy, and you should probably blast their eyes off. I'm just kidding. Don't shoot me, buddy.
Confidence comes from knowledge, and confidence comes from experience, and confidence comes from self-awareness.
Taking a risk. Yeah, you have to know who you are in order to find the person that actually best suits you. And really, that confidence that that we keep hearing is taking a risk, stepping out there and declaring, I want to know you better. I want to date you.
I feel like there's a song about that.
That's confidence.
But that doesn't mean full disclosure, right? It doesn't mean
it's not full disclosure, no.
You don't walk up to a random stranger like, hey, I think you're really cute, and here's everything that's going on in my life. Let's get married, right? That's different.
No, you don't emotionally dump on people. That's exhausting. No. My goodness.
I have done that before, where I've walked up and like, you're really pretty. I just wanted to talk to you. It kind of...
Well, direct game has its place, certainly.
Yeah.
But I'm talking more like laying out the whole relationship.
No, you don't want to do that.
I need more people to walk up to me and tell me how pretty I am. It would be wonderful. Honestly, I probably wouldn't date you because I'm happy, but I'd be like, thanks. I'm going to entertain this conversation for 5 minutes. No, but seriously, you don't emotionally dump. That's exhausting. How can you do that to everybody you meet? Why would you? How do you have that much emotion?
You meet people who do it. Well, it's because their emotional needs aren't being met. They're so starved for emotional intimacy because they haven't figured out how to exist in this dating space that they feel compelled. They feel compelled as soon as they find one person. Exactly, John. They find one person. They're like, "This is my person. I can't get over this person." They don't have outcome independence. And what's stupid is that drives at least men to women. That's what drives women.
Yeah, and we call it one-itis for the guy side and clingy for the girl side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I finally found somebody. I want to hold on and I want to choke it to death. I want to hug it. I want to pet it. I want to name him George.
Norman Bates style, dude, because this person's fully dead in your house, emotionally, and you're still getting up every day as if they exist. And that's insane.
Yeah, well, it's that low risk. If you go in low risk, then on the back end of it, it's supposed to be low risk breakup. But it's not that. The breakup is actually extremely hard because you found the one.
Right. And your soulmate.
And they're not the one.
Yeah, right. And I'm not going to sit here and say soulmates don't exist because we've all seen those couples, even if they admit to fighting all those things. You see them and you're like, this just works. And I think what happens is we see those people and it's, you see them in real life, maybe your grandparents or whatever, but you see these people and you're like, this just works. And you want that feeling. And so you think in order to get the relationship that's married 75,000 years, that I have to be perfect. I have to be this person. But behind the scenes, they went through every fucking thing imaginable. And you don't realize that it's mental fortitude that gets you through this. It's not being rich. It's not being famous. It's not any of those things that you think happens. It's all mental fortitude. The reason that they're still together after 57 years is because someone did not choke somebody 45 years ago.
Well, and you have to decide not just who you are, right? I think that's a huge part of it, is knowing who you are, like we've talked about. But you also decide what you want, and you have to realize that it is okay to want things that maybe not everyone else wants. Maybe being traditionally monogamously married for 70 years isn't going to work for you. That's okay. We live in 2020. We live in a liberated society. If you want to go out and pursue, like John says, play the field a little bit, have more casual relationships, not really commit to one individual person immediately, that's okay. If you want to not get married early and kind of wait and travel, that's okay. There are so many different things that you can pursue in your life that aren't just the traditional monogamous marriage. And I think that's really important that people understand and think about, is what do I actually want? What does my happiest life look like? If you want to be some kind of crazy master of relationships and be dating 3 different people at the same time, that's okay. There's ways to do that, but you have to decide what you want, because if you just go along and do the slide instead of decide, John, you should trademark that.
I would, but it's already been trademarked.
We should see when it's up and take it.
Well, it's been coined. I have to give that to Professor Stanley out of University of Denver.
Okay, well, that's good. But what I'm saying is, if you just do the slide and don't decide for yourself, you're going to find yourself time and time again in these relationships where someone's getting choked to death, emotionally, obviously, or you're going to find yourself very unhappy in a position that's untenable down the road. Whereas if you are just honest with yourself today and you say, okay, I want to go out and find one person to be happy with for the rest of my life, or you say, I want to go out and experience as many relationships and models as I can until I find the one that's right for me. Doing that now, today, no matter where you are, who you are, that is going to be so much more fruitful than just kind of being a lemming and jumping off the cliff and then finding out later on that you don't like falling 100 feet into the ocean.
Right. Be you and be honest about who you are.
Yeah, and you have to declare what your level of commitment is. Because I hear people, or I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this person taken or not? So I'm going to ask a question that kind of alludes to that.
Trap them, yeah.
Yeah, like if I ask them out and like, well, no, I'm kind of seeing someone. Oh, so you have a boyfriend? Well...
Right. Oh my gosh, yes or no, lady? Yeah, like, come on.
Yeah, it's yes or no. Or you find out that they're not cohabitating, but they're cohabitating. Where they kind of live in the same house, but they're kind of also seeing other people because they're on a break. Yeah. What are you looking for? Are you looking for a short-term relationship, something kind of for the next 3 months because the holidays are coming up? Or are you looking for something long-term with potential marriage?
You got to break up before Christmas.
Well, and this, I think, John, this is you're right. It's the most important but it's like chess. We're playing chess with each other all the time. This little like social chess game. Because you want to find out this information. The problem is that when you're upfront and you just like walk up to somebody like, hey, I'm looking for a long-term relationship. But what about you? My name is John, by the way.
I do that.
That doesn't necessarily, I do that. Well, for men, always. I will say for men at least, that is, it doesn't necessarily convey as well because we kind of chop our hands off when it comes to value because it looks really desperate, unfortunately.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
For men at least.
Yeah. Like on maybe the second, maybe, or possibly even third date. That's usually when I come out with that and I'm looking for, I'm kind of looking for, what are you looking for? Because on the first date, it really depends on the person. You have to read them correctly.
Right. And the first date, again, we're only trying to accomplish 2 things. But once you get to that second, third date, then obviously there is some investment. There's some interest. You're starting to like each other, you're starting to get to know each other, then it's a lot more appropriate to kind of get into that type of conversation.
Okay, so I think our timeline's off, because to me, the third date, and I just think in the terms of me being a monogamous man, the third date is right away. You know what I mean? So when I say you tell someone you're honest with them, the third date, I do agree, is a good time to talk about your commitments, your long-term goals, all those things. So I was thinking when you said right away, I was thinking the third date. I was not thinking like the first date. Why would you do that? That is exhausting. Once again, don't be an exhausting person. People are already tired.
Yeah.
Second and third dates are like, I would say, the actual beginning of courtship. The first date is more like,
let's hang out.
Are you a serial killer?
Yeah, are you a serial killer? Is there a spark, right? But then the second and third day is really the beginning of the process where you're actually comfortable enough to start opening up and get to know each other.
Yeah, because you have to make some kind of declaration on your level of commitment to the relationship. Because I've gone out with girls and they're not looking for anything long term. They just want to go out and they want to have fun. So it's strictly short term. Hey, we're going to go out. We're going to hang out here. We're going to do this on this. But when you start getting into those middle or mid-range type relationships or even the long term, the level of commitment goes up and you have to approach those dates, not hangouts, actual dates with some kind of plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me clarify one thing, just to make sure I'm understanding you, John, is that, we're talking about this clarification. We're talking about this kind of fleshing out of what your desire is and how you want your relationships to operate. Not all of this happens verbally. And I think that that's maybe one thing that we missed touching on. A lot of this can happen non-verbally, or we mentioned earlier with frames, how you convey yourself. So for myself, I am a non-monogamous person. I don't just walk up to people and say, hey, I don't date just one person at a time, because that's not going to fly, right? Most people are not going to be like, that sounds great. Awesome. They're going to be like,
It really depends on how you frame it, because I do let other girls know, because of this whole slide versus decide thing. You start going out with somebody, and if you go out on more than one date, then, and if it's not declared and specified, then all of a sudden you are cheating. I thought it was just us. Nobody said that.
Well, and so for like myself, I'll never really, I'll always convey that I'm a person who's a lot going on in his life, who's seeing other people, who is going to be a person who is engaged with a lot of different people in my life. I never ever will set that expectation of, hey, let's go on a date. I think that we're destined to be monogamously married. And it's really important that you convey that early on. And I think that that's kind of what, John, you've been touching on. But just my point is, you can convey that verbally, directly, right? Or you can be less direct. You can you don't have to walk up to someone and shove that information into their head. You can tell them about your life and what's going on. And here and there, you're going to give them glimpses and pieces of here's what my dating life looks like. Here's what my relationships look like. And as you progress, as you get that level of investment past the second and third date, as John's talking about, the mid-term dating situations where if you've been seeing someone for a couple months, then eventually, you sit down and you have like a talk, quote unquote. You sit down and you really talk about what's the relationship going to look like moving forward? What do you feel about each other? And,
that's when I tell them, hey, can we be exclusive?
Or not exclusive, or whatever your situation is going to be.
Whatever you're looking for.
But you need to have that conversation eventually. And again, not the second or third date. This is much later on. And you have to be willing to, this is the hardest part, I think, for a lot of people. You have to be willing to say, here's what I really want. I really like you. We're having, our relationship's going well. I really like you. Here's what I want. If you don't want that, it's okay. I will let you go. I will be sad to see you go, but I want the best for you. And that's something that I think a lot of people are not willing to put on the table because they're so afraid of losing their person. But that is ultimately the better choice for you and them. Because if you say all this stuff about what you envision your life to be like, and they're sitting there like, what the hell is he talking about? And then you still try to hold on to them. That's the worst thing you could do to a person.
Yeah. Because they're going to feel like they just wasted the last month, 3 months, 5 years. And it's a terrible thing to do. And that's kind of what I try to convey in a lot of our shows, that it's okay to let them go. A lot of my exes I am still friends with. Now, we don't have that romantic interest anymore, and we're not romantic with each other, but they can come over. We can sit down. We can talk. They tell me about their relationship, the guy that they're going out with, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not jealous of it. And if I'm telling them, well, yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing, but I'm with this girl over here, they're not jealous of me. And it's because there was a declaration of, a level of commitment that we made, and we didn't just kind of slide into everything.
You decided mutually that wasn't going to work for you. No, and that's the really proper way to do it. Like for myself as well, John, I haven't had like what people consider a quote unquote breakup in years, because people just float away, or, things don't work out and it's okay. But when you have these monogamous codependent relationships, where this is a topic for a whole another day, but we've internalized emotional violence in our relationships, and I can talk on and on endlessly about that. But people want to have this confrontational, adversarial breakup, and I'm like, you just don't have to do that. If things don't work out, let that person go. Let them be happy, and you get to be happy as well.
And you both know things are not working out, so there's no point in having this violent, confrontational thing. Right. Like, you don't need to. If it's over, it's over. Let it go. Now, this is me, like, literally internalizing and knowing who I am as a person. I think all three of us have dealt with emotionally violent breakups, and they destroy you as a human, because not only did you let yourself get there, but you let someone else get there with you. And that person, it destroys you. So why even put yourself in the idea of doing that?
And it can also weigh in on the next relationship, because you're going into that one even less confident.
And less happy. Yep. Less
and
everything.
You're willing to take less risk, which makes it even harder to get out of if it doesn't work.
Well, and it's just incredible to me to see, these people loved each other and took care of each other for 3 years. And I had a buddy who went through a breakup, and he went for 6 months. He's just down in the dumps and down and out. And, I can't fathom that feeling, because luckily for me, I've made a decision that I don't ever want to really deal with that ever again. So I've structured my life in a way that's not present. But, this guy had a great relationship, a beautiful relationship. They just couldn't handle the difference in their expectations. And then all of a sudden, half a year of his life is down the drain. So I think it's really important that you don't just address this ideologically. It has real world impact, and it can really affect you, not just for a day or a week, but for a long time, right?
A breakup can destroy your entire life. Like, and this is crazy, and it sounds crazy when you speak about it, but the truth is, some people right now are in relationships, and they aren't even over the last person they were dating. And that breakup destroyed them emotionally to the point where they can't even connect with the new person they're with.
But they jumped into it, because that's what we do, is we jump into the deep end.
Because you don't want to be alone.
Well, that kind of goes with the last show that we did, where honest to God question that came in. I'm in love with two brothers. And she had an emotional connection with one guy who proposed to her and said, hey, let's move across the country. She said no. So he cut off everything. So she starts going out with the brother. Came in and said, hey, I'm having a party. Would you like to come over? Well, he's a fun-loving, happy, outgoing, very confident, flirty person. She went to the party. They started making out and hooking up. And now she's like, okay, I'm not over him, but I'm developing feelings for him.
I think the biggest takeaway, and this is what I would say to anyone that was struggling with their relationships, past the first step, right? Struggling with their relationships in the intermediary, in the long term, as far as breakup and finding the right person, so on and so forth. You have to be brave enough to say, I know who I am. I know what I want. And when things aren't working out 100% and you're not with the person that you want, you have to be brave enough. And you are. You can do it. I believe in you. To say, I really love you, or I really like you, and I enjoy our time together. This is the things that I want. If you don't want that, I will let you go, because I want you to be happy. And I swear to God, that will make all the difference in your life, whether you're in a monogamous relationship, whether you're in some kind of non-monogamous configuration, whether you are having those types of feelings. Being brave enough to say, I know what I want, and I'm willing to go after it no matter what. And I want people in my life to be happy, and letting them go when I have to will lead to that confidence, that outcome independence, and ultimately a much happier situation for you. None of that emotional violence. And I think that's the takeaway I'd want for everyone to have from this conversation.
And that's like amazing takeaway, by the way. Taylor, thank you so much for being there. And being here really, and being able to open that dialogue, because it's a very uncomfortable thing we're talking about. And it's very hard for people to even begin to admit the fact that, this lifestyle I'm living, or this way I was, like you said to me earlier when we were talking about it, this life I was sold is way different than the life I purchased. So thank you for being able to do all of those things.
Yeah,
of course. And thank you guys so much for having me on. This is a conversation I try to have with a lot of people, and people will start going, yeah, as soon as I start talking, but people generally don't open up this type of conversation themselves. So I think it's important that we talk about it.
It really is. And you're right, that declaration of what you're looking for is so important. And we mention it time and time again throughout the show. But I do want to kind of get in, if people want to get more information about what Taylor is talking about and what he has going on, he is a dating and personal development coach, very much like we are, but he teaches things slightly different.
I was going to say it's very different than what and it's not different in the way where
it's really
it's bad.
Different. He has a different way of coming at it than we do.
I was going to say, I focus on personal development and getting yourself situated and ultimately making sure your life is right, because that's what's going to make you successful, not just in your financial life, but also in your dating life.
Right. And he does Forgotten Basics, and ForgottenBasics.com is where you can find all those things you need to from him. Listen, there's 7 billion people in the world. So there's no way we can tell you what we do is right, what he does is right. What we can tell you is they're different. And even if they're on the same fundamental teachings, sometimes what resonates with you will resonate more with Taylor. And that's why we want to make sure that we plug what he's doing, that everyone knows that he's a stand-up guy who's very honest, as you can tell. And if you want to head over to Forgotten Basics, go ahead and do it, and you'll probably not regret it. Unless you think about us first, then head over to our website. We're not better, but we're better. No, I'm kidding.
And it's really why I went to so many different coaches, and I've learned from different people, and I've pulled different things from different people. That's really where our course and everything that we have comes from. And he studied other people, and we probably stumbled across some of the same.
Right.
But we take from different people, and we find what works for us. What works for me may not work for Taylor. What works for Taylor may not work for me. But it might work for you.
That is the beauty of being human.
Yeah.
Is that 7 billion people cannot have the same teacher. Obviously, me and John would love a cult-like following where you guys worship us. That just speaks to my ego, really. But no, seriously, check out Taylor. Check out everything he's doing. I'm telling you guys, as you heard from this conversation, he's a very intelligent man with something very important to say. And so to not check him out would be a disservice to you as an individual.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, man.
Not a problem. Thank you. And with that, we will talk to you on the next one.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of the Girls Ask Guys show, where all of us learn to master this thing called life together. For more answers to your questions on life and love, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And head to girlsaskguyshow.com to submit your questions for a future episode or apply to be a guest on the show. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Girls Ask Guys show.